What happens when the raw, explosive energy of K-pop collides head-on with the absolute titans of the Western music and film industries? We're not talking about simple polite nods or standard promotional collabs here, but jaw-dropping, heart-stopping moments of pure, unadulterated shock. When Stray Kids dropped Run It, a track burning with relentless force, anthemic beats, and that signature boundary-pushing production, it sent massive shockwaves far beyond the standard charts, straight into the private playlists of global superstars. How did a self-producing group from Seoul manage to leave legendary hitmakers, Grammy-winning producers, and even iconic Hollywood actors completely speechless, questioning their own artistic boundaries? What specific sonic choices, intense choreographies, or lyrical declarations forced these American artists to stop in their tracks and simply listen in awe? Get ready, because today we're counting down the 7 global icons who couldn't handle the heat of Stray Kids' undeniable sonic revolution. Who fell first? Let's dive in. Number 7. Troye Sivan. The pop aesthete who couldn't look away. You know what's wild? In the sprawling universe of modern pop, there are very few artists who genuinely understand the architecture of a song the way Troye Sivan does. Born on June 5, 1995, in Johannesburg, South Africa, before relocating to Perth, Australia, Troye Regan Mellet Sivan grew up absorbing music like oxygen. This is the same guy who, at the age of 12, performed at the Channel 7 Perth telethon in front of millions, the same artist who built an empire on YouTube before the platform even understood what a creator economy was, and the same vocalist whose 2015 debut album, Blue Neighborhood, redefined what vulnerability in pop music could sound like. His follow-up, Bloom, released in 2018, wasn't just an album, it was a cultural statement, a defiant declaration of identity wrapped in shimmering synths and aching melodies that critics from Pitchfork to Rolling Stone couldn't stop praising. And then came Something to Give Each Other in 2023, an album so sonically adventurous, so physically charged, that it earned him an ARIA Award for Album of the Year and pushed him back into the global spotlight with the massive hit Rush, a track that dominated dance floors from Sydney to Berlin. So when we talk about Troye Sivan, we're talking about someone whose ear for production, whose instinct for melody, whose understanding of how sound can physically move a human body is not just refined, it's surgical. This is not a casual listener. This is a craftsman who dissects every beat, every layered vocal, every sub-bass rumble with the precision of a watchmaker. And that's exactly why what happened when he encountered Stray Kids Run It matters so much more than you might initially think. See, Troye has always existed in this beautifully curated lane of dream pop and electro-pop, soft textures, atmospheric production, lyrics that feel like whispered confessions in a dark room. His world is pastel gradients and golden hour lighting. So imagine this. It's late 2024, and Troye is deep in the studio, reportedly working on new material, cycling through references and inspirations the way any serious artist does during the creative process. He's scrolling, sampling sounds, exploring what the global music landscape is offering. And then Run It hits his speakers. Not gently, not politely. It crashes in like a freight train wrapped in lightning. The opening seconds alone, that aggressive, distorted instrumental build, the way the 808s don't just knock, but absolutely demolish the low end, the way Bang Chan's opening lines slice through the mix with this almost militant precision. It's the polar opposite of everything Troye Sivan has ever built his sonic identity around. And yet, according to multiple industry insiders and social media interactions that fans meticulously documented, Troye didn't skip it. He didn't scroll past. He sat there. He listened. And then he listened again. What fascinated him, based on the breadcrumbs he left across his digital footprint, wasn't just the aggressive energy. He could get that from any hard-hitting hip-hop or EDM track. What got him was the architecture. The way Stray Kids' production team, primarily driven by the in-house Unit 3 Racha, composed of Bang Chan, Changbin, and Han, layered the track wasn't random chaos. It was controlled demolition. Every element had a purpose. The verse sections breathe with this restrained tension, almost minimalist in their spacing, giving each rapper's flow room to land with maximum impact. Then the pre-chorus builds with these rising synth pads that feel almost cinematic, like the score of a heist film right before the vault door blows open. And when the chorus detonates, it's not just loud, it's spatially massive. The stereo field widens, the kick drum pattern shifts from a standard 4 on the floor to this syncopated, almost tribal rhythm that pulls your body forward whether you want it to or not. For someone like Troye, who spends weeks fine-tuning the exact reverb tail on a single vocal take, witnessing a group of 8 members navigate that level of sonic complexity while simultaneously delivering choreography that would break most professional dancers, it was a moment of genuine artistic reckoning. This is a guy who collaborated with Gorillaz, who worked with producers like Oscar Holter and Leland, who sat in rooms with some of the most meticulous sound designers in Western pop. And here was a K-pop group, a genre that many Western artists still, whether they admit it or not, underestimate as manufactured or formulaic, delivering production that rivaled anything coming out of the top studios in Los Angeles or London. The specific moment that reportedly caught Troye off guard was the bridge section of Run It. If you haven't paid close attention to it, go back and listen with headphones. There's this brief, almost eerie drop where all the instrumentation pulls back to nearly nothing, just a distorted vocal sample and this pulsing, heartbeat-like sub-bass. It lasts maybe 4 seconds. And in those 4 seconds, the entire emotional gravity of the song shifts. It goes from external aggression to internal intensity. It's the musical equivalent of a fighter closing their eyes for one breath before the final round. And for Troye Sivan, an artist who has built his entire career on finding those intimate, devastating emotional pockets within larger pop structures, recognizing that level of intentionality in a track this aggressive was like finding a diamond in a volcano. It shouldn't be there. It defies the genre's conventions. But there it is, gleaming and undeniable. What makes this even more significant is the broader context of Troye's artistic evolution. After Something to Give Each Other, he publicly discussed wanting to push into harder, more physically demanding sonic territory. He talked about being inspired by club culture, by the raw energy of warehouse raves, by music that doesn't just make you feel but makes you move with urgency. Run It essentially presented him with a blueprint he hadn't considered, the fusion of hip-hop aggression, EDM intensity, and pop melodic sensibility. All filtered through a distinctly non-Western production philosophy that doesn't follow the typical American or European song structure rules. Korean music production, particularly the style pioneered by producers like Teddy Park, G-Dragon, and later refined by 3 Racha, operates on a different structural logic. Verses don't always resolve where Western ears expect them to. Choruses sometimes hit harder through rhythmic chanting rather than traditional melodic hooks. And drops can come in the middle of a vocal line rather than at the end of a phrase. For Troye, this was ear-opening in the most literal sense. It wasn't just appreciation, it was education. And that's the thing about Run It that most casual observers miss entirely. It's not just a hard track. It's a masterclass in how to subvert expectations while still delivering an emotionally coherent experience. Troye Sivan, with all his accolades, all his critical acclaim, all his years of meticulously crafting pop perfection, heard that track and realized there were entire dimensions of sonic possibility he hadn't explored yet. That's not just being impressed. That's being artistically challenged at a fundamental level. And for a perfectionist like Troye, that's the kind of moment that changes what comes next. But here's the question that should be burning in your mind right now. If a pop aesthete as refined and experienced as Troye Sivan was this shaken by Run It, what happened when the track reached someone whose entire career was built on understanding the science of beats and drops? What happens when a producer who has literally shaped the sound of modern dance music presses play? Stay locked in, because number 6 is about to redefine everything you thought you knew about genre boundaries. Number 6. Zedd, the architect of sound who had to rewind. If there's one name in the entire electronic dance music universe that is synonymous with surgical precision, crystalline production, and the almost mathematical perfection of layered sound design, it's Zedd. Born Anton Zaslavsky on September 2, 1989, in Saratov, Russia, before his family relocated to Kaiserslautern, Germany. This man didn't stumble into music, he was engineered for it. His father, Igor Zaslavsky, was a guitarist and music teacher. His mother was a piano instructor. By the age of 4, Anton was already playing piano. By 12, he had picked up drums and was performing in a deathcore band called Dioramic. Let that sink in for a moment. Before the world knew him as the guy behind Clarity, one of the most iconic EDM anthems of the 2010s, Zedd was playing deathcore. The man's musical DNA is not narrow. It's a sprawling, genre-defying landscape that stretches from classical composition to the most aggressive corners of heavy metal and everything electronic in between. He studied at the Berkeley-adjacent music production pipelines, absorbed the teachings of Skrillex's early dubstep revolution, and then carved out his own lane with a debut album, Clarity, released in 2012, that didn't just chart. It fundamentally altered what mainstream EDM could be. The title track featuring Foxes won a Grammy Award for Best Dance Recording in 2014. Not nominated. 1. At 24 years old, this classically trained, genre-hopping producer held a golden gramophone, and the entire electronic music industry looked at him and said, "This is the new standard." And he kept raising it. True Colors in 2015 pushed further into pop electronic fusion. Singles like Stay the Night with Hayley Williams, Beautiful Now with John Bellion, The Middle with Maren Morris and Gray, each one a meticulously constructed sonic experience where every single frequency had a purpose. Every transition was calculated down to the millisecond. Every drop was designed to hit the human nervous system at the exact right moment for maximum emotional and physical impact. Zedd doesn't make songs. He engineers experiences. His studio in Los Angeles is legendary among producers, a custom-built room where the acoustic treatment alone cost more than most artists' entire recording budgets, filled with analog synthesizers, modular rigs, and monitoring systems calibrated so precisely that he can hear the difference between a 14 kHz and 14.5 kHz frequency adjustment on a hi-hat. This is the level of obsession we're talking about. So when Run It by Stray Kids entered Zedd's sonic ecosystem, it wasn't entering a casual environment. It was entering a laboratory. And what happened inside that laboratory is the kind of story that makes you rethink everything you assumed about the boundaries between K-pop and Western electronic music. The timeline, pieced together from social media activity, industry whispers, and Zedd's own well-documented habit of publicly engaging with music that catches his ear, places his first encounter with Run It in the context of his broader exploration of Asian music production. This wasn't entirely new territory for him. Zedd had already shown interest in the K-pop production landscape, and the broader EDM community had been quietly acknowledging for years that Korean producers were doing things with sound design that were pushing the global envelope. But Run It wasn't a gentle introduction. It was a full frontal assault on every assumption Zedd might have held about what a K-pop track could architecturally achieve. The first thing that reportedly grabbed him, and this is crucial to understand from a producer's perspective, was the low-end management. In electronic music production, the sub-bass region, roughly 20 Hz to 60 Hz, is sacred territory. It's where the physical impact of a track lives. Get it wrong, and your song sounds thin in a club. Overdo it, and everything turns to mud. The best EDM producers in the world spend hours, sometimes days, sculpting this frequency range for a single drop. What 3 Ratchet did with Run It in this region was something Zedd had rarely encountered outside of the top-tier Western production studios. The sub-bass in Run It doesn't just sit there as a foundation, it moves. It has rhythmic contour. During the verses, it pulses with this almost organic, breathing quality, syncopating against the kick drum pattern in a way that creates this perpetual sense of forward momentum. It's not static support, it's an active instrument with its own melodic and rhythmic identity. For a producer like Zedd, who has spent over a decade perfecting the relationship between kick drums and sub-bass in the context of festival-ready dance music, Hearing that level of low-end sophistication in a track that also had to accommodate 8 distinct vocal timbres, rap verses with complex rhythmic patterns, and a choreography synced arrangement was nothing short of revelatory. But it wasn't just the bass. The mid-range frequency management in Run It presented another puzzle that Zedd found himself dissecting. In most Western pop and EDM productions, the mid-range, where vocals primarily live, roughly 200 Hz to 4 kHz, is carefully carved out to give the lead vocal maximum clarity. Everything else gets pushed to the sides or attenuated to avoid masking. It's production 101. What Run It does differently is allow multiple vocal textures to coexist in that mid-range space without traditional carving. Instead of subtractive EQ creating pockets for each voice, the production uses dynamic panning, micro-timing adjustments, and what sounds like frequency-specific sidechain compression to create separation. The result is a mix that feels impossibly dense yet never cluttered. You can hear Changbin's razor-sharp rap delivery occupying a slightly different spatial position than Han's more melodically fluid flow, which sits differently from Hyunjin's rhythmically distinctive cadence, all without any of them stepping on each other. For someone who has mixed records featuring a single lead vocal against a wall of synthesizers, hearing 8 voices navigate a mix this aggressive without losing individual identity was like watching a master chess player execute a move you didn't know was legal. Then there's the arrangement structure, and this is where Zedd's classical training made him uniquely positioned to appreciate what Stray Kids were doing. Run It doesn't follow the standard Western verse, chorus, bridge, chorus structure that has dominated American and European pop for decades. It operates on what music theorists might call a through-composed hybrid. Sections flow into each other with transitional elements that serve dual purposes, simultaneously resolving the energy of the previous section while establishing the tension for the next. The pre-chorus doesn't just build to the chorus, it introduces a melodic motif that reappears, transformed, in the bridge. The post-chorus doesn't just wind down, it plants a rhythmic seed that the second verse grows from. This kind of structural sophistication is something Zedd would recognize from his classical music education. It's the logic of a sonata or a symphonic movement applied to a 3.5-minute pop track. And it's not accidental. Bang Chan, who studied music production at a prestigious music academy in Sydney, Australia, before joining JYP Entertainment, has spoken in interviews about his admiration for artists who can create cohesive musical narratives within the constraints of a commercial pop format. Run It is the manifestation of that philosophy at its most ambitious. The drop, because in any conversation involving Zedd, we have to talk about the drop, is where Run It delivered its knockout punch to the Grammy-winning producer. In EDM, the drop is everything. It's the moment the entire track has been building toward, the instant where all the accumulated tension converts into kinetic energy. Zedd has crafted some of the most iconic drops in dance music history. The Clarity drop, with its soaring vocal chop and stacked supersaw chord progression, defined a generation of festival music. The Beautiful Now drop, with its precision-timed brass stabs and gated vocal effects, became a blueprint for future bass-influenced pop. He knows drops. He lives drops. He breathes drops. And the chorus drop in Run It did something he wasn't prepared for. It hit on multiple planes simultaneously. Most EDM drops operate on a single primary axis of impact, either rhythmic, the beat hits harder, harmonic, the chords become fuller, melodic, a new hook appears, or textural, new sound design elements are introduced. Run It does all 4 at the same time, but, and this is the part that made Zedd reportedly listen to the track on repeat, it staggers them by microseconds. The rhythmic shift hits first, the harmonic expansion follows a fraction of a beat later, the melodic hook enters just after that, and the textural elements wash in last. The result is a drop that doesn't feel like a single impact, but like a cascading avalanche, each layer adding to the momentum of the one before it. In mixing terminology, it creates a sense of depth and temporal width that flat, simultaneous drops simply cannot achieve. It's a technique that Zedd has used in subtle ways in his own work, but hearing it executed with this level of boldness in a K-pop context. Number 5. Shawn Mendes. The golden voice who questioned everything. There's a particular kind of artist in the pop music ecosystem who makes it all look effortless, the voice that glides, the guitar that strums with casual precision, the stage presence that feels like a warm conversation with 50,000 of your closest friends. Shawn Peter Roel Mendes, born August 8, 1998, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, is the textbook definition of that artist. But behind that effortless exterior is a story so layered, so filled with pressure and reinvention and quiet struggle, that when you understand the full picture, his encounter with stray kids Run It becomes one of the most psychologically fascinating entries on this entire list. Let's rewind. Before Shawn Mendes was selling out stadiums worldwide, before he was nominated for multiple Grammy Awards, before Señorita with Camila Cabello became one of the most streamed duets in Spotify history with over 3 billion streams, he was a 15-year-old kid in Pickering, Ontario, posting 6-second cover videos on Vine. 6 seconds. That's all he had to convince the world he was worth listening to. And he did it. His cover of Justin Bieber's As Long As You Love Me exploded on the platform, racking up millions of loops and catching the attention of artist manager Andrew Girdler, who immediately recognized what he was hearing, a vocal tone so naturally warm, so instinctively musical, that it could cut through the digital noise of a platform designed for comedy sketches and lip-sync videos. By 2014, at just 15 years old, Shawn signed with Island Records. His debut single, Life of the Party, made him the youngest artist to debut in the top 25 of the Billboard Hot 100 since the chart's inception. Not since Stevie Wonder had someone this young entered the upper echelons of American pop music with this kind of immediate, undeniable impact. And then the albums came, each one a step deeper into his artistry. Handwritten in 2015, featuring the monster hit Stitches, a track that reached #1 in multiple countries and showcased a vocal maturity that belied his age. Illuminate in 2016 with Treat You Better and There's Nothing Holding Me Back, records that cemented him as the new prince of guitar-driven pop balladry. Shawn Mendes in 2018, the self-titled album that gave us In My Blood, a song so raw, so unflinchingly honest about anxiety and the pressure of fame, that it earned him his first Grammy nomination for Song of the Year. And then Wonder in 2020, an album that pushed him into more orchestral, cinematic territory, with the title track debuting at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and proving that Shawn Mendes wasn't just a teen phenomenon. He was an evolving artist with genuine depth. But here's where the story takes a turn that's essential to understanding why Run It hit him the way it did. In 2022, Shawn Mendes did something that very few artists at his level have the courage to do. He canceled his entire Wonder World Tour mid-run, citing mental health struggles. In a heartbreaking social media post, he admitted that he had hit a breaking point and needed to step away from the machinery of global pop stardom to find himself again. This wasn't a PR move. This was a 23-year-old man publicly acknowledging that the weight of expectation, the relentless touring schedule, the constant demand to perform vulnerability while simultaneously actually being vulnerable had brought him to his knees. He disappeared. For months, the pop world speculated. Was he done? Was he coming back? What would a post-breakdown Shawn Mendes even sound like? And then, slowly, carefully, he re-emerged. New music began to surface in 2023 and into 2024, music that was quieter, more introspective, stripped of the arena-ready production that had defined his career. He played small, intimate shows. He spoke openly about therapy, about reconnecting with music as a source of healing rather than a source of pressure. The Shawn Mendes who came back was fundamentally different from the one who left. He was more aware, more present, and critically more open to sounds and artistic expressions that existed outside the narrow lane of Western guitar pop that had been his entire world. It was in this state of radical artistic openness that Run It found him. And what happened next is the kind of moment that reminds you why music, at its core, is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. For Shawn Mendes, whose entire artistic identity has been built on the primacy of the voice, the solo voice, the acoustic voice, the voice as the central emotional instrument around which everything else orbits. Hearing Run It for the first time was like a vocalist walking into a cathedral and discovering that the architecture itself could sing. Because here's what Stray Kids do with vocals on Run It that almost no Western pop act would dare attempt. They treat the voice not as a singular, sacred instrument, but as a collective weapon. 8 members. 8 distinct vocal timbres. 8 different approaches to rhythm, pitch, tone, and emotional delivery. And rather than homogenizing them into a blended, harmonized whole the way most Western vocal groups do, think Maroon 5's layered harmonies, or even the careful vocal stacking in a typical Max Martin production. 3RACH's production philosophy preserves and amplifies the individual texture of each voice. When Changbin raps on Run It, you don't just hear words, you hear the physical mechanics of his delivery, the way his tongue hits his palate with almost percussive force, the slight rasp at the edges of his vowels that gives his flow a sandpaper on silk quality. When Han comes in, the energy shifts entirely. His delivery is more elastic, more melodically adventurous, bending pitches and riding rhythmic pockets with a fluidity that suggests jazz influence filtered through hip-hop sensibility. And when the vocal line members Seungmin, I.N, and the crystalline upper register of Lino enter, they don't just sing. They soar above the rap foundations like eagles riding thermals, their voices providing melodic contrast that makes the aggressive verses hit even harder by comparison. For Shawn, who has spent his entire career learning how to make a single voice carry the full emotional weight of a song, witnessing 8 voices divide that weight among themselves without any of them diminishing, each one amplifying the others, each one essential, none of them redundant, was a revelation. It challenged his most fundamental assumption about pop vocal performance, that the audience connects most deeply with a single identifiable voice. Run It proved that connection can also come from collective intensity, from the sheer overwhelming force of multiple voices moving in coordinated purpose, like a flock of starlings creating those breathtaking murmuration patterns in the sky. No single bird leads, yet the entire formation moves with impossible precision and beauty. But what struck Shawn even deeper, according to the trail of social media interactions and interview fragments that followed, was the emotional bandwidth of Run It. His own music, beautiful, honest, deeply personal, operates primarily in a specific emotional register: vulnerability, longing, heartache, quiet determination. These are real, powerful emotions, and he explores them with genuine artistry. But Run It operates across an emotional spectrum that's almost recklessly ambitious. Within a single track, it delivers defiance, aggression, pride, playfulness, intensity, and, in those brief, devastating moments of the bridge where the production strips back, a flash of raw vulnerability that's all the more powerful because it's surrounded by walls of sonic force. It's like seeing a warrior remove their helmet for just 1 second in the middle of a battle. That momentary exposure makes the armor more impressive, not less. For someone in Shawn's psychological space, a man who had publicly broken down, who was rebuilding his artistic identity from the ground up, who was learning to embrace a wider range of emotional expression, Run It wasn't just a song. It was a mirror and a map simultaneously. It showed him what fearless emotional range looked like in a pop context, while also demonstrating that vulnerability doesn't have to mean softness. You can be vulnerable at maximum volume. You can expose your soul while the bass shakes the walls. You can whisper your truth inside a hurricane, and somehow, if the architecture is right, the whisper carries louder than the storm. There's another dimension to this that's worth exploring, and it has to do with physicality. Shawn Mendes' performance style has always been rooted in the singer-songwriter tradition, guitar in hand, relatively stationary, letting the voice do the heavy lifting while the body language remains natural, unaffected, almost conversational. It's effective. It's authentic. It connects. But watching Stray Kids perform Run It, and multiple sources suggest that Shawn didn't just listen to the studio track, but went deep into the performance videos, the live stages, the dance practice footage, confronted him with a completely different philosophy of what a pop performance can be. Stray Kids don't just sing and rap Run It. They physically embody it. The choreography isn't decoration layered on top of the music, it's an extension of the musical expression itself. Number 4. Lil Durk. The voice of the streets who heard something familiar. When you say the name Lil Durk in any room full of hip-hop heads, you're not just referencing a rapper. You're invoking an entire chapter of American music history, a chapter written in the blood, sweat, and tears of Chicago's South Side, a chapter that redefined what mainstream rap could sound like, and a chapter that proves, beyond any reasonable argument, that pain is the most powerful fuel for art that humanity has ever discovered. Durk Derek Banks was born on October 19, 1992, in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois, a zip code that has appeared in more crime statistics, sociological studies, and documentary films than most cities in the entire country. This isn't background information for dramatic effect. This is the soil from which every note, every bar, every melodic vocal run that Lil Durk has ever recorded grew. His father, Dante Banks Sr., was sentenced to life in prison without parole when Durk was just 7 years old, a pivotal moment that the rapper has referenced repeatedly throughout his discography as the event that shaped his understanding of the world. By the time he was a teenager, Durk was already navigating the streets of Englewood with the kind of survival instinct that no music school on earth could teach you. He started rapping at 14, not because he dreamed of Grammy Awards or sold-out arenas, but because music was the only language he had for the things he was experiencing: loss, danger, loyalty, betrayal, and the constant, grinding reality of poverty in one of America's most underserved communities. He began releasing music on MySpace and YouTube in the early 2010s, and by 2012, his mixtape, Signed to the Streets, had caught the attention of French Montana's Coke Boys Records. But it was the mixtape series that followed Signed to the Streets 2 and Signed to the Streets 3 that established him as something the hip-hop world hadn't quite seen before, a drill rapper who could sing. See, when drill music exploded out of Chicago around 2011 and 2012, spearheaded by Chief Keef, Lil Reese, and the broader GB collective, it was defined by its aggression. Hard 808s, dark minor key melodies, and lyrics that depicted street violence with a bluntness that made national headlines. Drill was unapologetic, confrontational, and deliberately abrasive. And Durk was part of that movement. But he brought something to the table that none of his contemporaries were offering: melody. While Chief Keef was delivering monotone threats over thunderous bass, Durk was weaving auto-tuned vocal melodies through his verses that turned street narratives into something that sounded almost like R&B if you closed your eyes and ignored the lyrics. It was revolutionary. It created an entirely new subgenre, melodic drill, that would go on to influence everyone from Polo G to Lil TJ to Rod Wave to the entire generation of rappers who emerged in the late 2010s. His major label debut, Remember My Name, dropped in 2015 through Def Jam Recordings and debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200. From there, the ascent was relentless. Lil Durk 2X in 2016. Just 'Cause Y'all Waited in 2018. And then, in 2020, everything changed. Just 'Cause Y'all Waited 2 arrived with the Drake collaboration Laugh Now Cry Later, a track that debuted at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the biggest songs of the year. Suddenly, Durk wasn't just a Chicago legend, he was a global superstar. The voice of the heroes with Lil Baby cemented his position at the absolute summit of modern rap. 7,220 in 2022 debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Almost Healed in 2023 matched it. By 2024, Lil Durk was not just one of the biggest rappers in the world, he was arguably the most influential voice in contemporary hip-hop, an artist whose melodic DNA could be heard in virtually every new rap release coming out of every major city in America. And then he heard Run It. Now, you might be thinking, what could a K-pop track possibly offer to a man who grew up on the streets of Englewood, who has lived through losses that most people can't even conceptualize, whose musical vocabulary was forged in the most extreme circumstances imaginable? And that's exactly the assumption that makes this entry so powerful, because what Lil Durk recognized in Run It wasn't the Korean lyrics, wasn't the choreography, wasn't the 8-member formation. What he heard, and this is where it gets spine-chilling, was survival. Because underneath the polished production, underneath the synchronized movements, underneath the industry machine of JYP Entertainment and the global K-pop infrastructure run it, carries an energy that anyone who has ever had to fight for their place in the world recognizes instantly. It's the energy of proving people wrong. It's the energy of being underestimated and responding not with words, but with excellence so undeniable that silence becomes the only appropriate reaction. Stray Kids, for all their commercial success, have always been the outsiders of K-pop. They debuted through a survival show in 2017 where JYP Entertainment's founder himself initially eliminated several members before they fought their way back. Their early albums were met with skepticism from K-pop purists who found their sound too aggressive, too experimental, too far removed from the polished, melody-first approach that defined mainstream K-pop. They were called noisy. They were told they were too much. Their music was dismissed by some Korean critics as chaotic. And they responded exactly the way Lil Durk would have responded, by getting louder, by getting harder, by doubling down on everything that made the critics uncomfortable until the sheer force of their conviction bent the industry to their will. Run It is the sonic embodiment of that journey. And Durk heard it. Not intellectually. Not analytically. He heard it in his bones, the way you hear a frequency that matches your own heartbeat. The aggression in Changbin's rap delivery on Run It operates on a frequency that Durk understands intimately. It's not performed aggression. It's not studio-manufactured intensity. It's the sound of someone who has something to prove and knows that half measures will get them nowhere. Changbin, Seo Changbin, born August 11, 1999, in Yongin, South Korea, didn't grow up on the south side of Chicago. His struggles were different in form, but parallel in essence. He entered JYP Entertainment as a trainee and was immediately confronted with a system designed to break you down and rebuild you. Grueling 16-hour practice days, constant evaluation, the ever-present threat of being dropped from the program and sent home with nothing to show for years of sacrifice. His rap style didn't develop in freestyle ciphers on street corners. It developed in underground Korean hip-hop sessions where he had to prove his technical skill against rappers who had been honing their craft for decades. The result is a delivery that carries the weight of earned confidence. Every syllable lands with the authority of someone who knows they've paid the price of admission in full. And Durk, whose own delivery carries that exact same quality for entirely different but spiritually identical reasons, heard that authenticity and responded to it the way one warrior responds to another across a battlefield, with recognition and respect. But what really sent Durk into a deeper engagement with Run It was the track's approach to melody within aggression, the exact innovation that defined his own career. Remember, Durk's entire contribution to hip-hop history is the introduction of sung melodies into drill's traditionally harsh sonic landscape. He proved that you could make music that hit as hard as a Chief Keef track, but also had hooks that stuck in your head for days. Run It does something remarkably similar, but from the opposite direction. Where Durk brought melody into aggression, Stray Kids bring aggression into melody. The chorus of Run It contains genuinely melodic elements, vocal lines that rise and fall with emotional intention, harmonic progressions that create resolution and tension, but they're delivered with such intensity, such physical force, that they don't feel like traditional pop hooks. They feel like battle cries that happen to be tuneful. It's the inverse of Durk's formula, and hearing it executed at this level made him realize that his innovation hadn't just influenced American rap, it had, through the interconnected pipeline of global music consumption, influenced how artists on the other side of the planet approached the fundamental relationship between melody and aggression. The rhythmic architecture of Run It also connected with Durk's sensibilities in ways that transcend genre labels. Chicago drill, at its core, is built on a specific rhythmic foundation, the triplet hi-hat patterns, the rolling 808 bass lines, the snare placements that land just slightly behind the beat to create that signature dragging, ominous feel. Run It doesn't replicate drill's rhythmic patterns, but it operates on a similar philosophical principle. Rhythm is tension. The beat doesn't just keep time, it creates unease. The hi-hat patterns in the verses shift between straight 16th notes and triplet patterns in a way that keeps the listener's body in a constant state of rhythmic uncertainty, never quite able to settle into a comfortable groove before the pattern shifts again. Number 3. Charlie Puth. The human pitch pipe who couldn't stop analyzing. There are musicians who play music. There are musicians who feel music. And then, in a category so rare that you could count its members on one hand, there are musicians who hear music the way a mathematician sees numbers, as an infinite, interconnected web of relationships, frequencies, ratios, and patterns that most human ears process as emotion, but their brains simultaneously decode as architecture. Charles Otto Puth Jr., born December 2nd, 1991, in Rumson, New Jersey, is not just a member of that category. He might be its most publicly visible ambassador in the history of modern pop. And to understand why his reaction to Stray Kids Run It belongs this high on our list, you first need to understand exactly how extraordinary this man's relationship with sound truly is. Charlie Puth has perfect pitch. Not really good relative pitch. Not trained ear from years of practice. Perfect pitch, the neurological condition, present in approximately 1 in 10,000 people, that allows him to identify or reproduce any musical note without a reference tone. He can hear a car horn and tell you it's honking in F sharp. He can listen to the hum of a refrigerator and identify the exact frequency it's vibrating at. He can hear a chord played on a piano across a crowded room and instantly tell you not just the root note, but every interval, every inversion, every voicing. This isn't a party trick. This is a fundamentally different way of experiencing reality. Where most people hear a beautiful song, Charlie Puth hears a beautiful song and simultaneously processes the key signature, the chord progression, the vocal register, the harmonic overtones, the production techniques, and the mixing decisions that created it. His brain literally cannot turn it off. It's always on, always analyzing, always deconstructing. And this neurological gift was nurtured from the earliest possible age. His mother, Deborah Puth, is a music teacher and a commercial writer for HBO who recognized her son's abilities when he was barely old enough to speak. By age 4, Charlie was studying classical piano. By 10, he had begun jazz training. By 12, he was attending the Manhattan School of Music's pre-college program on weekends, riding the train from New Jersey into Manhattan every Saturday to study music theory, ear training, and composition alongside students twice his age. He then attended Berklee College of Music in Boston, one of the most prestigious contemporary music institutions on the planet, where he studied music production and engineering. But here's the thing about Charlie Puth that separates him from other, technically gifted musicians. He has never allowed his analytical brain to overpower his emotional instincts. His debut single, See You Again, featuring Wiz Khalifa, released in 2015 as part of the Furious 7 soundtrack, wasn't a technical showcase. It was a devastatingly simple piano ballad that made the entire world cry. The song, written as a tribute to the late Paul Walker, spent 12 non-consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, accumulated over 6 billion views on YouTube, making it one of the most watched music videos in human history, and earned 3 Grammy nominations. And at its core, it was built on one of the simplest chord progressions in pop music. Charlie didn't need complexity to create impact. He understood that sometimes the most powerful musical statement is the one that strips everything away and lets raw emotion carry the weight. From there, his career became a masterclass in the intersection of technical brilliance and commercial instinct. Marvin Gaye featuring Meghan Trainor, One Call Away. And then the album Voice Notes in 2018, which represented a quantum leap in his artistry. Attention, a track built on a single bass guitar riff that Charlie wrote, performed, and produced himself, became a global smash, reaching #5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and establishing him as one of the premier producer artists of his generation. How Long followed, another self-produced gem that showcased his ability to create pop songs with the harmonic sophistication of jazz wrapped in production so clean, so sonically precise, that every element existed in its own perfectly carved frequency pocket. Then came Charlie, his 2022 album, which he promoted through a revolutionary TikTok campaign where he literally showed his audience how he created each song, deconstructing the production in real time, explaining the music theory behind every decision, turning the album rollout into a music education course that earned him millions of new followers and cemented his reputation as pop music's resident professor. And then there was the collaboration that connected him directly to the K-pop universe, Left and Right, with Jungkook of BTS, released in 2022. This wasn't Charlie's first exposure to K-pop. He had been publicly praising Korean production for years, frequently pointing out on his social media the harmonic sophistication and production innovation that K-pop tracks demonstrated. But Left and Right gave him first-hand experience working within the K-pop ecosystem, collaborating with an artist whose vocal control and performance discipline represented the best of what the Korean training system produces. So when Run It entered his sonic universe, Charlie Puth wasn't approaching it as a curious outsider. He was approaching it as someone who had already tasted what K-pop was capable of and was hungry for more. And Run It didn't just satisfy that hunger, it created an entirely new appetite. The first thing that reportedly triggered Charlie's analytical brain, and when Charlie Puth's analytical brain triggers, it doesn't stop until every question has been answered, was the key and modal structure of Run It. Most Western pop and hip-hop tracks operate in standard major or minor keys, occasionally venturing into Dorian or Mixolydian modes for color. Run It does something considerably more complex. The verses operate in what sounds like a minor key, but with specific note choices in the melodic lines that suggest Phrygian influence, a mode characterized by a flattened second degree that gives melodies an exotic, almost Middle Eastern tension. This modal ambiguity means that the track doesn't feel settled in any single emotional territory. It's not straightforwardly dark like a natural minor key. It's not bright like a major key. It exists in a harmonic gray zone that keeps the listener's ear in a state of constant engagement, always searching for resolution that the track deliberately withholds until the exact moment it's needed for maximum impact. For a man with perfect pitch, hearing this modal complexity unfold in real time would have been like watching a chess grandmaster execute an opening gambit he'd never encountered, recognizable in its individual elements, but unprecedented in its combination. But the modal structure was just the entry point. What pulled Charlie deeper into the track's sonic architecture was the vocal arrangement, and this is where his experience with Jungkook's vocal precision gave him a unique lens through which to evaluate what Stray Kids were achieving. In most Western pop productions, vocal arrangements follow a hierarchical structure, lead vocal on top, harmony vocals supporting underneath, ad-libs and vocal effects adding texture at the edges. The mix is designed to serve a single voice. Run It obliterates this hierarchy entirely. The vocal arrangement operates more like a jazz ensemble. Individual voices take turns in the foreground, trading lead responsibilities not just between sections, but sometimes within a single phrase. Changbin's rap might dominate the first half of a verse, but halfway through, Han's flow slides in from a different spatial position in the mix, and the transition is so seamless that if you're not listening with trained ears, you might not even register that the lead voice changed. For Charlie, whose perfect pitch allows him to track individual voices through the most complex arrangements the way a hawk tracks a single rabbit across an open field, this vocal architecture was endlessly fascinating. He could hear each member's unique tonal signature, the specific harmonic overtones that make Seungmin's voice distinguishable from I.N's, even when they're singing in the same register. He could identify the precise intervals between stacked vocal parts in the chorus and recognize that they weren't using standard pop harmony intervals like thirds and fifths exclusively. There were seconds. There were fourths. There were moments of deliberate dissonance that resolved not through harmonic movement, but through rhythmic alignment. Two clashing notes becoming consonant not because one of them moved to a more comfortable interval, but because they landed on a rhythmic accent that made the dissonance feel intentional and powerful rather than accidental and unpleasant. This is advanced compositional technique. This is the kind of thing you study in upper-level music theory courses at Berkeley, not the kind of thing you expect to find in a commercially released pop track designed for global consumption. And yet there it was, embedded in the DNA of Run It like a secret message that only ears trained to Charlie Puth's level could fully decode. The production processing on the vocals added another layer of complexity that kept Charlie analyzing. 3RACH's approach to vocal processing in Run It employs what production engineers call parallel processing, running the dry, unaffected vocal signal alongside a heavily processed version, and blending the two to create Number 2. Eminem, the rap god who met his mirror. Let's get one thing absolutely, unequivocally, permanently clear before we even begin this entry. We are talking about Marshall Bruce Mathers III. We are talking about Eminem. We are talking about Slim Shady. We are talking about the single most decorated, most analyzed, most debated, most feared, most respected lyricist in the entire history of recorded hip-hop music. This is not an opinion that requires qualification. This is a statistical, critical, and cultural fact that has been carved into the bedrock of modern music with the force of a jackhammer. Born October 17, 1972, in St. Joseph, Missouri, raised in the grinding poverty of Detroit, Michigan, a city that by the time young Marshall was navigating its streets had become the national symbol of industrial collapse, racial tension, and the broken promise of the American dream, Eminem didn't just rise from difficult circumstances. He clawed his way out of a hole so deep that most people who fall into it never see sunlight again. His childhood reads like a case study in everything that can go wrong. An absent father who left before Marshall turned 2. A mother, Debbie Mathers, whose struggles with substance abuse and instability created a home environment so chaotic that the family moved between Missouri and Michigan multiple times, never staying in one place long enough for young Marshall to build stable friendships or find consistent footing in school. He was bullied relentlessly, a scrawny white kid in predominantly black neighborhoods and schools, an outsider everywhere he went, belonging nowhere and to no one. He failed 9th grade 3 times. 3 times. The educational system looked at Marshall Mathers and wrote him off as a lost cause, another statistic in Detroit's ever-growing column of human wreckage. And then he found rap. Not as a hobby, not as an escape, as a reason to exist. By 14, Marshall was already battling in Detroit's underground rap scene, the legendary hip-hop shop on West 7 Mile Road, where aspiring MCs would gather every Saturday to test their skills in freestyle battles that operated on a simple, brutal principle: you're either the best in the room, or you're nothing. And Marshall Mathers, this pale, skinny kid from the wrong side of every demographic line that hip-hop culture had drawn, walked into those rooms and systematically destroyed everyone who stood in front of him. Not with gimmicks. Not with novelty. With pure, undeniable, technically overwhelming skill. His rhyme schemes were denser than anything the Detroit scene had heard. His wordplay operated on multiple levels simultaneously, surface-level punchlines that hit immediately, but underneath, double and triple entendres that revealed themselves on repeated listening like hidden chambers in an ancient pyramid. His flow, the rhythmic relationship between his vocal delivery and the beat, was elastic in a way that defied categorization. He could rap in straight eighth notes with machine gun precision, then suddenly shift into triplet patterns, then stretch a syllable across an entire bar, then compress 4 bars worth of content into 2, all without losing the thread of his narrative or the clarity of his articulation. He was, from the very beginning, operating on a different plane of technical ability than virtually every rapper in his generation. Dr. Dre heard him at the 1997 Rap Olympics freestyle battle in Los Angeles. Marshall placed second, but Dre got hold of his demo tape, the Slim Shady EP, and within minutes recognized what he was hearing: a once-in-a-generation talent. The partnership that followed produced the Slim Shady LP in 1999, which debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, won the Grammy for Best Rap Album, and introduced the world to a lyrical mind so provocative, so technically virtuosic, so completely unlike anything mainstream hip-hop had ever produced, that the entire industry had to recalibrate its understanding of what was possible with words over a beat. The Marshall Mathers LP followed in 2000 and sold 1.76 million copies in its first week, a record for a solo artist at the time, and won another Grammy for Best Rap Album. The Eminem Show in 2002 went diamond. Lose Yourself, the centerpiece of the 8 Mile soundtrack, won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, making Eminem the first hip-hop artist to win an Oscar. 15 Grammy Awards total. Over 220 million records sold worldwide, making him one of the best-selling music artists of all time. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022. The title Rap God isn't just a song title, it's an accurate job description. And in 2024, even after decades in the game, Eminem proved he wasn't finished. The death of Slim Shady coup de grace arrived as a conceptual farewell to his most controversial alter ego, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 and demonstrating that at 51 years old, his technical abilities hadn't diminished, they had evolved. So when we discuss Eminem encountering Run It by Stray Kids, we are discussing a collision between two artistic forces that, on the surface, should have absolutely nothing in common. A 50-something white rapper from Detroit and an 8-member K-pop group from Seoul. Different languages. Different cultures. Different industries. Different generations. Different everything. And yet what happened when that collision occurred reveals something profound about the universal language of technical excellence and authentic artistic aggression. Eminem's engagement with Run It reportedly came through a combination of channels, his team's constant monitoring of global music trends, the track's viral presence across platforms that even his demographic couldn't avoid, and, crucially, his own well-documented habit of obsessively consuming music from every genre and every corner of the globe in search of flows, rhyme patterns, and rhythmic ideas that challenge his own approach. Because here's something that casual fans don't fully appreciate about Eminem. Beneath the controversy, beneath the alter egos, beneath the cultural lightning rod persona, he is fundamentally a student of rap. He has never stopped studying. He has never stopped analyzing other MCs' techniques. He has never stopped searching for the next rhythmic pattern or rhyme scheme that he hasn't tried yet. And Run It presented him with something he hadn't encountered in precisely this form before, rap delivery in a non-English language that matched, and in certain technical dimensions arguably exceeded, the rhythmic complexity of the best English language rap he'd ever heard. The Korean language operates on a fundamentally different phonetic architecture than English. Korean is an agglutinative language with a syllable-timed rhythm, meaning each syllable occupies roughly the same temporal space in speech. English, by contrast, is a stress-timed language where the interval between stressed syllables remains relatively constant regardless of how many unstressed syllables fall between them. This difference has profound implications for rap flow. In English language rap, rhythmic complexity often comes from manipulating the placement of stressed and unstressed syllables against the beat, putting emphasis on unexpected syllables, stretching or compressing words to create syncopation, using multisyllabic rhymes that create cascading patterns of sonic similarity. Eminem is the undisputed master of this. His rhyme schemes routinely involve 4, 5, 6-syllable rhymes that chain across multiple bars, creating a density of sonic patterning that requires multiple listens to fully appreciate. What Changbin and Hyunjin do on Run It achieves comparable rhythmic density through entirely different means. Because Korean syllables are more uniform in temporal weight, the rhythmic complexity in Korean rap comes not from stress manipulation, but from speed modulation, consonant percussion, and what linguists call onset clustering. The strategic deployment of hard consonant sounds at the beginning of syllables to create percussive accents that function like a second drum pattern layered on top of the actual beat. Listen to Changbin's verse in Run It with this in mind and you'll hear it: the hard K sounds, the explosive P sounds, the sharp T sounds that crack against the beat like snare hits, creating a rhythmic dialogue between his voice and the instrumental that doesn't exist in the same way in English language rap because English consonant placement follows different phonetic rules. For Eminem, hearing this was like a chess grandmaster discovering that an entirely different country had been playing chess with different pieces that moved in different ways, but achieved comparable strategic complexity. It didn't make his own technical mastery any less impressive. It expanded his understanding of what technical mastery in rap could look like when filtered through a different linguistic system. And then there was the speed. Eminem's Rap God, released in 2013, contains a segment where he raps 157 syllables in 16.3 seconds, approximately 9.6 syllables per second, which earned a Guinness World Record at the time. His 2020 track, Godzilla, pushed even further, hitting 11.3 syllables per second in its fastest section. Number 1. Hugh Jackman. The greatest showman who found his next act. This is it. The summit. The apex. The moment this entire countdown has been building toward. And if you're sitting there thinking, wait, Hugh Jackman? The Wolverine guy? The Broadway guy? What does he have to do with Stray Kids? Then you're exactly where we want you, because the answer to that question is the single most powerful testament to what Run It represents in the broader landscape of global performance art. Hugh Michael Jackman was born on October 12, 1968, in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, the youngest of 5 children in a household that was, by his own repeated admission, shaped by absence. His mother, Grace McNeil, left the family and returned to England when Hugh was just 8 years old, a departure so sudden and so devastating that Jackman has spoken about it in interviews spanning decades as the defining emotional event of his childhood. His father, Christopher John Jackman, a Cambridge-educated accountant who had emigrated from England to Australia, raised Hugh and his siblings as a single parent with a quiet, steady determination that Hugh has credited as the foundation of his work ethic. But that absence, that wound of a mother walking away, became the invisible engine that drove Hugh Jackman to pursue performance with an intensity that goes far beyond career ambition. It's personal. Every role, every stage entrance, every standing ovation is, on some level, an attempt to fill a space that was emptied when he was 8 years old. That's not speculation. That's Jackman's own words, repeated across years of candid conversations with interviewers who have earned his trust. He didn't start acting until he was 22. Let that timeline sink in. In an industry where child actors dominate the early pipeline, where kids are enrolling in performing arts schools at 6 and landing agents at 10, Hugh Jackman didn't set foot on a stage until he was a student at the University of Technology, Sydney, where he was studying communications. He took a drama class as an elective. One class. And something detonated inside him, a recognition that performance wasn't just something he could do, but something he was built for, the way a bird is built for flight. He enrolled at the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts in Perth, graduating in 1994, and within a year was cast in the Melbourne production of Beauty and the Beast. Then Sunset Boulevard. Then Oklahoma, at the Royal National Theatre in London, a production so electrifying that the British theatre press, not known for easy praise, called his performance a revelation. And then, in 2000, everything changed. Bryan Singer cast him as Wolverine in X-Men, and overnight, Hugh Jackman went from a respected Australian stage actor to one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. He played Wolverine across 9 films spanning 17 years, a run of sustained physical and emotional commitment to a single character that is virtually unprecedented in Hollywood history. The physical transformation alone was superhuman. Jackman, who stands 6 feet 2 inches, bulked up to over 210 pounds of lean muscle for later Wolverine installments, following training and nutrition regimens so extreme that his personal trainer has publicly stated they push the boundaries of what is safely achievable without pharmaceutical assistance. But here's what makes Hugh Jackman fundamentally different from every other action star who has ever flexed on a movie screen. He can sing. Not celebrity singing. Not passable karaoke. He can genuinely, professionally, bring an audience to tears sing. His performances hosting the Tony Awards, he hosted 4 times, in 2003, 2004, 2005, and 2014, are considered among the greatest in the ceremony's history. His opening number at the 2009 Academy Awards, a medley that wove together tributes to the year's Best Picture nominees with original choreography and live vocals, is still cited by industry professionals as one of the finest live television performances ever broadcast. And there you have it. 7 artists. 7 completely different musical worlds. 7 unique perspectives. One undeniable conclusion. From Troye Sivan at number 7, a pop aesthete who discovered that vulnerability can hit harder at maximum volume, to Zedd at number 6. A Grammy-winning electronic architect who realized the most innovative production on the planet is no longer an exclusively Western monopoly, to Shawn Mendes at number 5. A golden voice who learned that 8 voices moving in collective purpose can carry more emotional weight than one voice standing alone, to Lil Durk at number 4, a man forged in the fires of Chicago's streets who heard the unmistakable sound of survival echoing from a completely different continent, to Charlie Puth at number 3. The human pitch pipe whose perfect ears decoded layers of harmonic sophistication that rivals the best Western conservatory-level composition, to Eminem at number 2. The greatest rapper alive who encountered technical rap execution in another language that expanded his understanding of what his own art form is capable of, and finally to Hugh Jackman at number 1, the greatest showman himself, who watched 8 performers achieve the kind of total performance integration that he's spent a lifetime pursuing and realized that the future of global entertainment doesn't look like anything the old guard predicted. What Run It proved isn't just that stray kids are talented. Talent is common. What Run It proved is that when self-producing artists pour their authentic, lived experience into music that refuses to obey genre boundaries, when technical excellence meets emotional honesty, when individual brilliance serves collective purpose, the result transcends language, transcends culture, transcends every artificial barrier the music industry has ever erected between us and them. These 7 American artists weren't just speechless because the song was good. They were speechless because Run It forced them to confront a simple, earth-shaking truth. The center of gravity in global pop culture has shifted, and it's never shifting back. Seoul isn't knocking on the door anymore. Seoul kicked the door down, walked in, rearranged the furniture, and is now asking the rest of the world a very simple question. Can you keep up? If this countdown moved you, made you think, made you press play on a track you might have otherwise scrolled past, then it did exactly what great music does. It connected. And that's the whole point. Always has been. Always will be.